Hello and welcome to Calls. This is the 2021-2022 season bet review show. Different show for you all tonight. It is the first week of the off season for the PGA Tour, so thought it would be a good chance to take a look back at the previous season and critique my performance a little bit and have a little bit of fun with you all. Remember the good and not so good wagers that I had and recommended for you all during the year. Again, off-season week, the first of about 5. So a little bit of different form of content, much more laid back, but we're going to have a little bit of fun. Really want you all to jump in to chat. Looking forward to that interaction. Let's have some fun, a little banter. Remind me of some very, very stupid wagers, and hopefully some wagers that you all did hit, because I did have a few during the 2021-2022 season. But a couple of reminders first. There will be a Friday night chill stream. I'm not sure what I am going to be doing for it, but I will be live 8 p.m. Eastern on Friday evening. So hopefully after the turkey naps have happened, have a little bit of basketball or football on in the background, drop on by, say hello, hang out for a little bit on Friday evening. I could be playing some games. I also might be doing some baseball research, as I'm going to be doing some more baseball content next season. So I could be organizing some of that, looking forward into the baseball season in that regard from a statistical site that I have found and really, really enjoy. But we'll get into something as we do every Friday evening. So I do want to make that reminder for you all. And then I have a couple of congratulations to give out. First off, James, again, with a very productive week at the RSM in terms of Showdown. Pops had a very good Showdown week, as well as a lineup that he and I kind of coordinated together, finished 4th in a contest. So it was a very, very strong performance in terms of weekend golf Showdown. In terms of the full week, it was okay. My top 3 players in my rankings missed the cut. Hoagie, Neesmith, Taylor Moore. So kind of shot any of my full week lineups. Although I did cash a lineup or two thanks to Patrick Rogers, Alex Smalley being high on these players. No mention of Adams Vincent and outrights. Seamus Power was there for a little while. I had an outside chance at a win ticket on him. Ended up faltering a little bit down there at St. Simons Island, Georgia in the finish. But we were close to an outright ticket. But I want to hear from you all. How was your RSM? So no Fantasy National tonight, but I would be remiss if I did not mention Fantasy National, even though we're not going to be using them tonight. It is Thanksgiving week after all, so I am very, very thankful for Fantasy National, all the statistics that they gather. I would not be able to do what I do without them. As a statistical analyst, it provides me all of the information I need to give you whatever insights that I can for the weeks for golf tournaments. So I'm very thankful for Fantasy National. Do go check them out. It is simply the best tool out there. I truly do believe that. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media, Twitter and Instagram. This is where I normally post research, but with the PGA Tour in the off season, much more slow in terms of golf research content. But if you want to see my betting cards from week to week, a summary of the research that I do, that is where I place that information. So give me a follow there. And then the link to my Twitch channel is in the description as well. This is where I do a lot of my Showdown content. I'm going to be doing some gaming, especially a lot here in the off season. So if you are interested in that form of content, give me a follow there as well. Like I mentioned, chat is open. We are live. Wanting to have a lot of interaction. Want to hear from you all. What were some of your best wagers during the 2021-2022 season? Who are some players that maybe you don't want to admit that you bet, but did? I certainly have a couple of those. But like I said, this is going to be very laid back. It's supposed to be fun. Have a little bit of a laugh at my expense, but also show the success rate, the successful wagers that I had throughout the year, all that good stuff. I think that is it for an intro. So why don't we go ahead and move on into the crux of the show. Again, more laid back, much different layout since this is not a normal week. It's the off season. So the first place I'm gonna take you to here is I'm going to show you the 9 placement bets that hit for me throughout the year. It wasn't a lot, I understand that, but a lot of my focus goes into DFS, so I thought it'd be pretty interesting just to kind of take a look here, see what all happened well for me in terms of the outright market. So with that, I've also got my mixed condition models from last year, just to give an idea on where some of these players may have placed in my rankings, some of the thought process I might have had in betting them. But you can see I hit 9 placement bets, and these all happened to be top 20s. It's just what I bet the most. Now, starting this season at the 2023 essentially Fortinet, I have done more or a variation of bets. I've added some top 10s. I've even bet top 5s or so, but these here tonight all happen to be top 20, so it's not going to be distinctly labeled, but just for your information, they are all top 20s. So the first 5, and they're not going to be in chronological order, they are in order of the odds. So bear with me. I am working on some things in the background, trying to get better at my OBS software, especially during streaming. But the first 5 that I hit in terms of top 20s were all at 4-1. We had Hayden Buckley at the Sony. That one was very, very interesting. Again, being a Korn Ferry Tour grad, having a decent fall, he rated out very well for me at the Sony. He was 7th in my rankings. Heading into the Sony, placed a top 20 wager on him, hit. Next, the very, very next week was Tom Hoagie at the Amex, and he ended up finishing runner-up to Hudson Swafford. Hoagie made a big charge on Sunday, late on the back 9, but Hudson Swafford proved to be too much for him that week. But again, another hit of a top 20 at 4-1. JJ Spawn at the Valero. JJ Spawn ended up winning the Valero. So yes, while it could be argued that maybe I should have had the win wager on JJ Spawn, hitting a top 20, I'm never going to be upset. JJ Spawn was 12th in my rankings that week. At the ball striking course, so he had been ball striking it well. I just liked the value that I saw there, 4-1. Probably the biggest or the top 20 of these 5 that I'm most proud of. Brandon Wu at Mexico. John Rahm was the overwhelming favorite that week, deservedly so. He won, but Brandon Wu was pretty under the radar coming into that week. He was 17th in my model. The par fives ended up being very, very important. He was top 10 in par fives coming into that week. So very, very happy with that hit and that recommendation that week. And it has carried on into a lot of this fall when I am recommending Brandon Wu on these past Palom courses, on these courses in the tropics. He generally has played those types of events well. And then finally, the last 4-1 top 20 I hit throughout the 2021-2022 season. Chris Kirk at the PGA. Not really a whole lot to say here. He was all the way down to 30th in my rankings, but he was just solid. He rated out good to average on majority of the metrics that I had put in there. He was top 25 in strokes gained total when it was difficult, which was one of the metrics that I had. Top 15 off the tee. He was just, like I said, he was just good to average in the majority of the categories. And I just had a good feeling about Chris Kirk coming into that week. He ends up top 5ing, actually. Finished tied for 5th at Southern Hills. So those are the 5 top 20s that I hit at 4-1. The next set of top 20s that I hit are all 5-1. And I hit all of these throughout the season as well. We'll start with Sahith Theegala at the Sanderson Farms. And it's not the last time we're going to talk about the Sanderson Farms tonight. But Sahith Theegala, again, coming off the Korn Ferry Tour, he rated 22nd in my model. Crazy pricing. Just to give you an idea, he was priced at $6,800 in DraftKings DFS at last year's Sanderson Farms. But devours the par fives. He was very, very good when it was easy, especially on the Korn Ferry Tour. Sanderson Farms and the Country Club of Jackson generally produces a lot of low scores. So 5-1 felt pretty good value on Sahith Theegala. I'm looking here to see what he did the week before at the Fortinet. And Sahith, he made the cut to a 47th finish, or a middling finish at the Fortinet the week before, and then again coming into the Country Club of Jackson, rated in the top 30 for me. Again, 5-1. I felt like it was decent enough value. He ends up coming through for me. Luke List at Houston last year, another 5-1 top 20 hit for me. I talked about it 2 weeks ago when we were at Houston. It's a ball striker's course. Luke List is a premier ball striker, especially with his irons. I just had a really good feeling about Luke List, even though he was 45th in my rankings for Houston that week. Again, it was just a strong feeling, and he fell mainly because I put so much emphasis into putting, and I now know that the putting form isn't as necessary as much as just having a hot week. But had a strong feeling on Luke List. Hit him at Houston at 5-1. So you can see the kind of fall and early 2022 that I had hitting top 20s at the Sanderson Farms, at Houston, at Sony, at the Amex, really set me on a positive course throughout the year, and I would need it, as we'll see here in a bit. But then finally, the last 5-1, Aaron Wise at the Arnold Palmer, 5-1. He always just rates out well in my model anyway, but plays difficult courses extremely well. If I scroll over here to the Arnold Palmer, let's see, Aaron Wise was 26th in my data model. So not the best, but again, when you take a look at Bermuda putting, strokes gained total when it's long, all of these metrics, kind of like Chris Kirk at the PGA, he was just good to solid. No real weaknesses in the mixed condition model for the Arnold Palmer for Aaron Wise. So bet him, and comes through at 5-1. We're going to talk a lot about Aaron Wise. If you are familiar with me, he is my FOMO, so we're going to talk about Aaron Wise quite a bit. However, the biggest top 20 hit that I had throughout the 2021-2022 season is a player that we're going to talk about a couple of times tonight. And that player is JT Poston. I hit him at 9-1 at the Travelers coming off of the Open Championship. Coming off the U.S. Open. JT Poston finishes second to Xander. Top 30 in par fours, top 30 in birdies on short courses. A lot of things lined up for JT Poston. I felt 9-1 was really, really high. I felt pretty darn good about it. A comfortable hit there in that regard, and leading to some success that we'll talk about here after a little while. But also leading to some of the beliefs that I've had about JT Poston in the fall this season. Plays easy course as well, plays short course as well. There's a reason why I've been hinting at JT Poston, higher on JT Poston than what his results have shown so far in the 2022-2023 fall portion of the season. I believe in JT Poston in when it is short. On Pete Dye courses, he's generally pretty good. He was putting at POA extremely well coming into the Travelers, so a lot lined up for JT Poston there in terms of coming into the Travelers. So there's a look at the 9 top 20 bets that hit, and it was almost exclusively what I bet last year in terms of placements. Again, I've started to branch out top 10s, top 5s, maybe a top 40 here and there on some longer shots, but top 20s is generally where it was where I was at last year. It's generally where I'm at, so all of these being top 20s. And again, if you are watching live, thanks for tuning in first off, but jump in chat. I want to hear from you all. What were some of some of your wagers that you hit, placement wise, win wise? Maybe you had a specific tournament that ended up being very good for you. I know I had 2 of them that were very good, but I do want to hear from you also. Hopefully you all will jump in chat here. But there's a look at my placement hits for the 2021-2022 season. So now let's go on and take a look at the 5 winners that I had for the season. Just a reminder, there are 46 tournaments, or at least there were in the 2021-2022 season. 46 tournaments, so I hit 5 of the 46, so a little bit better than 10%. I will take it. I think that's pretty good. We'll see just how many bets I put in, so maybe the percentage isn't high, but when I'm hitting a winner once every other month or so, especially at some of the prices that I hit, it was pretty strong. So again, going to go in odds order. So probably the one that was the most obvious for me, at least, would be the one that I hit first. And that was Sam Burns at the Sanderson Farms. I mentioned how we talked about Sahith Tagala at the Sanderson Farms. We weren't going to be done at the Sanderson Farms. I hit the winner. Sam Burns was number 1 in my mixed condition model last year for it. Number 1 going into the Sanderson Farms when it was easy in terms of a strokes gained total. number 1 on par 5s, number 2 in Bermuda putting. He just loves Bermuda. You can see I hit him at 14-1. It's very rare that you get a tournament favorite that high in odds. So honestly, it was almost a bet out of sheer value for 14-1. Now, we're coming off a tournament at the RSM where the favorite was, I think, 16-1, but that's because Tony Finau ended up withdrawing. Most of the time, your favorites in a golf tournament hover around 10-1, 8-1, maybe 12-1 if it's not a premier field. But when you start getting into the 14, the 16-1s, I almost throw in a bet on that favorite just out of principle. When you really shouldn't get a tournament favorite at that kind of price. So a lot of things lined up there. Tournament favorite, number 1 in the mixed condition model, had played that course, that event well before. Was pretty expected. I don't want to sound arrogant, but it was a pretty expected result. I figured he would play well. Hitting 14-1 was good value in my book. The next winner that I hit comes 2 weeks later. So again, just building on this fall where I had the top 20 on Sahith Theegala, the top 20 for Luke List at Houston. I have the winner at the Sanderson Farms. Probably one of the favorite win bets that I hit, honestly, was Rory at the CJ Cup. I think he was the second choice. Might have been the favorite, but I think he was the second choice. But the Summit Club last year had never been seen on the PGA Tour. So we went through extensively, especially Sunday evening in the initial research, really dissected the course. And quite honestly, everything that I thought for the CJ Cup played out. I thought it was going to be easy. Even though it was long, it didn't play that long. I thought they would be lightning speed greens. They ended up being lightning speed greens. Everything just came together. Rory at 16-1. He was 6th in my data model. It just made sense. A lot of times, if you're going to get Rory at 16-1, you just throw something on it. And I was very, very confident in Rory that week after going through doing the mixed condition model, all that stuff. So really, really, really proud of that hit. And again, just building on this very, very strong fall that I had last season, having 2 winners, 2 top 20s. Now, this is where we start getting a bit into the higher odds. And this one, if Rory was my favorite hit, this is probably number 2 or 1B, if you will, hitting Max Homa at the Wells Fargo when it was at TPC Potomac this year. And the reason why I'm so particularly proud of this hit, TPC Potomac had been seen twice for the Quicken Loans National a few years back. And again, the Wells Fargo normally played at Quail Hollow, but Quail Hollow was under construction, if you will, for the President's Cup this season. So the tournament moves to TPC Potomac, and all week I spent quite a bit of time researching and trying to find a pattern for TPC Potomac and the 2 winners there. And I specifically remember finding some research that there was only one player that qualified under some certain criteria. I wish I would have had that up. Let me see if I can find it very, very quickly. Betting card for the Wells Fargo. So this is on my Twitter. I posted this on May 2nd. So TPC Potomac, last seen for the 2017-2018 Quicken Loans. Kyle Stanley and Molinari were your winners. Both came to the Quicken Loans with a tournament having gained at least 5 strokes off the tee and 5 strokes in approach in the previous 3 months. So that was the common denominator between Kyle Stanley and Molinari, your two previous winners at TPC Potomac. And then only one player qualifies this week. Can you guess him? Well, that player was Max Homa. So Max Homa was by far and away a big bet that I put in on him. Wins. So like I mentioned, if Rory is my favorite, Max Homa's 1B, just due to the fact that I had narrowed him and only him in a set of criteria for winning the tournament. And that kind of spawned the idea that I've had for Monday and Tuesday mornings, is to do these winner researches, and where I can, I bring you into Twitch to join me in these researches, and gives you an idea of my thought process as a statistician, looking into patterns and whatnot. So that one I was particularly proud of as well. So you see Homa 28-1, significant bet, significant hit. The second highest odds that I hit in terms of an outright, we've talked about him before. I had a top 20 on him that I hit just the week previous for him. So he top 20s the Travelers, and he comes back and wins the John Deere the very next week. JT Poston. Poston, you can see, 55-1. He was 40th in my rankings. There was nothing that signified that he should have been one of my earliest bets. But I really narrowed in on JT Poston. One, because the John Deere has such a plethora of 400 to 450 par 4s. He was number one in those. He was top 25 in the wind, and the John Deere can get very, very windy. It's exposed out there in Silvis. He plays well in the wind. The John Deere, notorious that par 4s are just so astronomically important out there. JT Poston was number 3 in par 4s. So even though he was 40th in my rankings, one of the first wagers that I put in that week, he wins at 55-1. So a pretty significant hit for me there. So 2 straight weeks going back to back, JT Poston hitting at the Travelers and then hitting the win at the John Deere made for my June to be pretty darn solid, and I would need it for the closing stretch. But the biggest win that I had in the 2021-2022 season, again, came early. Came very, very early. And honestly kind of set, it solidified a winning year, essentially, especially at his price. It was another player that I had hit a top 20 on earlier in the season. It was Luke List at the Farmers at 70-1. Everybody was coming in to the Farmers talking about DJ, talking about Bryson, talking about John Rahm. Everybody overlooked Luke List. The course is long. It's a ball strikers course. He was top 25 when it's difficult. He was 5th in around the green. Again, Farmers being so extremely difficult, you've got to be able to play around the green there. He was 13th in greens in regulation. A lot of things lined up. He was 12th in my rankings. Everybody was kind of sleeping on Luke List, at least in terms of an outright. So hitting that 70-1 really, really solidified the year, and was kind of the end of a very, very solid stretch for me. Starting at the Sanderson Farms, hitting Sam Burns and Tagala, hitting a couple of top 20s later on in the fall. Luke List at Houston, then the top 20 at the Sony, top 20 at the Amex, and then the very next week hitting Luke List here at the Farmers. That was a stretch there of 4 to 5 tournaments. Well, Sanderson Farm, so I guess maybe 6 or 7, but it was a stretch there where, calendar-wise, it's 3 to 4 months due to the layoff, but in terms of tournaments, it's about 7 or so. Just strong performance. Rory is in there as well, so hitting 3 winners in 2 months, coupled with some top 20s in there, really set a tone for having a successful 2022. But what you can see here is, with the exception of JT Poston the John Deere, which is in July, kind of fell off. To be honest with you, just kind of fell off. Didn't hit any winners after that, and did not have. I think maybe I had 1 top 20 after that. I'm going to go back and check. The Travelers, PGA Mexico, yeah, everything is early on in the season. So it looks like the John Deere, which is July 1st, and the only reason I'm remembering that is that it is a very convenient cutoff. I've been using it a lot in the fall this season to cut off some statistics. But since July 1st, I didn't have a hit. And it was okay. I could weather that storm just because of the sheer amount of success I had in the fall and early portion of the 2022 calendar year, January and early February. That was a massive windfall for me. So there's a look at the winners that I had. 5 in the 46 tournaments. Again, not the most impressive percentage, but it is still better. It is a better than a 10% hit rate. And when you're betting PGA fields, that's pretty strong. So before I go to some more, overall statistics, kind of take a look here. Let's see. In terms of players, I ended up betting 131 different players throughout the 2021-2022 season. 131 different players. There were only 10, however, that were positive in terms of return on investment. A lot of weeks where I had a top 20 here, a win here. These guys didn't cash their negative ROI. So only 10 that returned on investment positive. But again, Luke List hitting at 70-1, hitting JT Poston a 55-1 win and a 9-1 top 20 was very profitable. So let's get into some of these interesting outright stats here. So in terms of wins hit, we have seen I had 5 hits out of 46 tournaments, but I made 213 win wagers. So a very poor percentage, but again, I am emphasizing that I hit more than 10% of the tournaments. So even though I was trying to hit home runs essentially with a lot of these win bets, having 10% in terms of tournament was pretty strong. But 5 win hits, 213 win bets. Now a much more solid showing. We saw the placement hits. All of these ended up being top 20s, but I did hit 9 placements in 92 placement bets, so almost a 10% placement bet hit rate, period. That's not tournament, just outright placement hits. So very strong performance there in terms of performance ROI wise in these top 20s that happened to cash for me quite a bit. So you can see total I made 300 and quick math, 305 total wagers for the 2021-2022 season. and hit 14 of them. Again, not a very solid, actually a very poor percentage, but still a positive ROI due to the two big win hits, 70 and 55 and 1, and the success rate of these placement bets. However, let's go do some interesting individual stuff here. The most money won on a player, not going to be a surprise when that player is shown. It's Luke List. When you hit 70 to 1, it's pretty strong. Now, he was not the most positive return on investment. Throughout the year, I had made 5 wagers, 3 win bets and 2 other placements on Luke List. So I made 5 wagers on Luke List throughout the year. Again, hitting 71 is going to be, it's going to be very difficult for someone to catch you in terms of total money. JT Poston was very close. JT Poston, I only made 3 wagers in terms of wins or placements. I only made 1 placement wager on JT Poston. It was the top 20 at the Travelers. Comes in at 9 to 1, and then the next week, betting to wins 70 to 1. So he is by far the biggest return on investment player. But in terms of straight dollars, Luke List is the most money won player that I had for 2021-2022. Now, the most money lost, if you followed me for any time, this is not going to be a surprise when this name pops up. It's Aaron Wise. However, I think that's a little bit unfair. He is a FOMO. So Aaron Wise is clearly the player I bet the most in 2021-2022. I bet 26 wagers on Aaron Wise throughout the year, 22 win bets for placement wagers. I did hit one of those placement wagers, the top 20 at the Arnold Palmer, but even so, still negative in terms of return on investment, just due to the sheer number of wagers I made on Aaron Wise. The other FOMO I had in 2021-2022 was Taylor Gooch. I made 16 wagers on him, and none of those ever hit. I always bet him to win. And, of course, the one tournament he does win, the RSM, I didn't bet him to win. Stupid me. But anyway, so probably no surprise here. Aaron Wise is the most money lost player. But, again, he is my FOMO, so there's a little bit of an asterisk there. If you want to see or curious to see who my most money lost or most bet player that lost not being a FOMO, it was Gary Woodland. Gary Woodland, I bet 8 times. He never cashed, 7 of those being wins and a top 10, I think, maybe a top 20 at a major. Never cashed. So Gary Woodland was 0 for 8. Seamus Power and Nick Hardy were both 0 for 7. Johnny Vegas and Adam Svensson were both 0 for 6. Hilariously enough, now Adam Svensson wins. I didn't bet him this past week at the RSM. But so there's a look at some of the individual players and the amount of times that I wagered them, what types of wagers. Again, Aaron Wise is the player that I most often bet. He is my FOMO. In terms of other types of wagers, let me sort this here very quickly. I'm going to sort on column I. Largest to smallest. So the most placement wagers that I made for people, I bet Aaron Wise 4 times in placements, hit one of those. I bet Brian Stewart 4 times for placements. He never cashed. Nick Hardy, I mentioned I bet him 7 times. 4 of those were placements, 3 for wins. Let's see some other interesting facts here. Hayden Buckley, I bet 6 times throughout the year. The players that I bet most often to win, again, were Aaron Wise, Taylor Gooch. So Gary Woodland 7 times, Vegas 6 times. He almost cashed at the or he almost won the tournament, therefore cashing the bet at the Corrales Punta Cana, which we're going to talk about next week quite a bit. Bet Vegas 6 times, Seamus Power 6 times, Will Zalatoris 5 times, none of them cashing in terms of their wins. But let's see. If I'm going to do all of this interesting little look back in terms of players, I'm gonna have some fun here. Let me sort on the players that I actually bet. Let's see what my most cringe bet was. So looking here of the players that I bet once, I bet Bo Hogue once. Be interesting to see what that was from. I imagine that might have been the Memorial, because he generally plays the Memorial pretty darn well. I bet Bo Van Pelt once. Let's see. Chase Seifert. Bet Henrik Norlander once. I only bet John Rahm once, interestingly enough. Now, granted, he's generally the tournament favorite, so he's not going to have big numbers associated with him, but I would have figured I might have put more bets on him, but only put one win wager on John Rahm throughout the year. That's one that probably is going to go in a show later in the offseason. I did bet Padraig Harrington once. I bet him at the Barracuda. That didn't turn out so well. Yeah, so there's a look at some of the players that I made some wagers on that were quite questionable. But again, I had positive ROI on 10 players. You can guess easily the five of them. Burns, Rory, Homa, Post, and List from the winners. So these 5 clearly were ROI positive. And then in terms of these players, Hayden Buckley ended up being exactly even throughout the year in terms of ROI. Hoagie was positive. Spawn was positive. Brandon Wu. So everybody here was positive except for Hayden Buckley. Am I going to Hey James, how you doing? Am I going to cover the hero next week? No, probably not, unless there's a lot of demand for it. Generally, I just take the full off season off. I don't cover the hero. I don't cover the QBE challenge or shootout or whatever it's called. I more so look back at my performance like I have tonight, which is going to be a good reminder that next Tuesday night I am going to cover the DFS portion of my 2021-2022 season. Lots of interesting stuff there for you all to see, or just to get a feel for how I did and whatnot. But going back again, it's fun to go back and do some critique of yourself. I'm hoping that is one of the draws to what I offer, is that it's full transparency. I have no problem admitting to you all when I lose, when I do bad, all that stuff. So I'm never going to hide, my successes, hide my failures. But hopefully you all enjoyed a little bit of a look back at 2021 and 2022. Had a little bit of fun at my expense at some of these pretty poor wagers and relived some good ones. If you followed me on them, I hope you did. Hope you succeeded this past week at the RSM. I mentioned James in the intro. Congratulations on another strong week and a strong finish to your fall portion of your schedule. Next week, again, I will be focusing on the DFS portion. So a lot of the same types of metrics and stats that I showed you tonight. that will be for next week. Looking forward to that. But put it in the comments. What were some of the wagers that you were most proud of? What were some questionable players that you bet? If you wanna rag on me, dish on me for following me on some of these wagers and you lost, put them in the comments. Let's have some fun with it. Like I said, it's the end of the year. I'm not going to take it too seriously. I'm not taking myself too seriously here, showing you the winning and the losing. But hopefully I've provided you some form of winning here recently. And I do it, and I'm doing this showing you the successes, the failures, honestly, all in a thank you. It is Thanksgiving week. I am very, very thankful for you all that tune in and watch and listen. I say it every week, and I mean it every week. I thank you all for watching, supporting the channel, whether that be here, whether that be on Twitch, social media, all of that. I love what I do. I enjoy it. I try to do the best I can, have a little bit of fun while I'm doing it. But I will be live Friday evening as well, 8 p.m. Hopefully I'll wake up from the turkey naps by then. But we'll get into probably some baseball research, probably play a game or two. We can talk about whatever the community wants to talk about. I'm open for it. But there will be a Friday night stream this Friday. But again, as I sign off, thank you to every one of you that tune in and watch and listen and support me and support the channel. I really do appreciate it. I hope you spend the holiday with loved ones. You have a lot of good food, a lot of good company for this week, especially, but every week. And until I see you next week for the DFS review show, may all your bets be profitable. Thanks again.